Hey, it's Central Valley Business. I'm your host, Steve Walling. My guest for this segment is Matt Darby. Matt, welcome to the show. And you are running for Tulare County District Attorney.
That's correct, Steve. Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. Glad you're here. Matt, being a district attorney is a rather interesting position in the overall political scheme of things. What brought you to this point? How did you decide that you wanted to be a district attorney?
Well, I grew up in Porterville, California, which is, Porterville is a part of Tulare County. And for me, I think I always grew up with a strong sense of right and wrong and wanting to make a difference in people's lives. And so when I finished law school, I felt that it was a natural transition then to become a deputy district attorney. In particular, when I finished law school at McGeorge in Sacramento, I wanted to come back home, and so I moved home to Porterville. And shortly thereafter, I took a job at the Tulare County DA's office, and I ended up working there for 9 years. And at that time, during the time frame in Tulare County, I prosecuted everything from misdemeanors all the way to general felony to domestic violence cases to narcotics cases, and then a particular passion of mine was prosecuting child molesters. I did that for a number of years, and I felt that we had a tremendous amount of success. During that time, I was a part of a great team and was really able to make a big difference in some of the victims' lives. I really appreciated that time. And after about 9 years there, I decided to go to Kings County. I've been a prosecutor in Kings County for 3 years now, so a total of 12 years I've been a deputy district attorney.
So, Matt, what you're saying is you got a couple of weeks under your belt.
A couple weeks and then some.
And with some really broad and good experience, it sounds like.
Yes, I've been very blessed. I think I'm very, it's very humbling just to be able to work with a lot of different victims and police officers. And in truth, they're the ones that really help make a difference in the cases, and even being part of a situation where you might even have a 5-year-old child who shows the courage and bravery to take the stand and make a difference and point out the person that did these terrible things to them.
And that's, that's an awesome responsibility that you have, but it's almost like a calling, isn't it?
I think it's definitely a calling.
And to be able to step up and do that, and listen, I have a personal friend who works in law enforcement who spent many years working in the child abuse area of law enforcement. That's tough. I mean, what you see happen to these young people, but to have an advocate for them and to provide a place for them where they have a voice in our legal system is that's powerful. And that you go back and you do it again and again. It's got to be very rewarding. So what made you decide now just to step up and go for the head position? Where are you looking to go with this?
Well, I initially didn't plan to run for district attorney, but I found that there was a big need. I realized after talking to a lot of police officers, people in law enforcement, and just seeing some of the issues and the problems in Tulare County that there was a tremendous need for change and a tremendous need for us to take a step in the right direction in the future. And for me, I see three critical issues with the Tulare County DA's office right now. And when I say DA, I'm actually talking about the incumbent, Tim Ward.
Okay.
The people under him are doing a fine job, but I would say that number one, I do believe that there is an issue in Tulare County itself with a problem with gangs. Growing up in Tulare County, I can remember in particular near my parents' house out in the country, there was a water tower for a number of years, and that water tower, when you drove by it, all you would see was basically just the manufacturer's name on the tower.
Right.
Over the years, as time has gone by, that tower has started to be covered and plastered with gang graffiti, XIV, X4, you name it. And for me,
it's a beacon for territorial ownership by the members of the gang.
Exactly.
And it's also a point of contention within the gang community, which means there's, every time something goes up there, you can figure it's going to be followed by something else, right?
That's exactly right. And finally, the farmer got tired of painting over it, and every time I drive to my parents' house, and they've lived there for years, it's a constant reminder to me of who's trying to claim and stake ownership in our community and our county. And I want to fight and make a difference. And the way I want to do that is I want to use existing resources to double the size of the gang team in Tulare County. And I mean the prosecution team, using existing resources. Another problem I see is narcotics. And just even looking at the statistics, in 2015 we lost more people in the United States to drug overdose and drug abuse than we lost in the entire Vietnam War from American casualties. It's a big problem, And I was actually the last prosecutor in Tulare County that was specially trained to handle narcotics cases.
Really?
And I did that for about 3 years, and I felt I was partnered up with another DA. We were making good inroads. We had a firm partnership with the different agencies. We're making a big difference. But that position was reliant on the federal government. It was actually a federal government grant position.
Right.
And when that money ran out, they got rid of the position. I kept bringing back to the DA's office, and in particular the DA himself, that there was a need to have someone in that position specially trained. The response I was given was that if we put somebody in that position, the federal government will see that we don't have a need for federal government handouts or federal government money. So for years now, that position, no one's filled it, no one's stood in the gap to make a specific trained difference.
And Matt, there's a connection between drugs in our community and the gangs that are in our community also, isn't there?
Oh yes, absolutely. Yeah. And in fact, that's who controls the drug trade.
Exactly. So you're really kind of hitting the gang issue on two fronts. One, the actual membership and the problems that are there, and the disrespect to law, I'll put it that way, that comes out of the gangs, but also their major source of funding.
I agree.
If you take the food away, they're going to starve on some level. So that's good. What's your third point?
The third point is really there's actually a health crisis, a community health crisis right now in Tulare County, specifically in the city of Tulare. And what happened was a few years back there was an organization called MedFlow. This organization was led by this Dr. Benny Benzivi. He came in and took over the management of the hospital in Tulare. And what happened was, after a time, the grand jury stepped in to investigate because they had a series of bond measures that were passed. The grand jury discovered over 2 years ago that millions and millions of dollars were left unaccounted for. And what they did at that time was the DA's office, under Tim Ward's leadership, was asked to step in and to do an investigation. Well, Tim Ward did not step in. In fact, he didn't investigate. And so now, 2 years later, the hospital's closed.
Really?
The hospital's closed. Now, the good news is that those that were on the board previously who allowed this to happen, they were replaced by good folks in there. These folks are doing a Herculean effort right now to really get the hospital reopened, and I'm hopeful that they will soon enough. But the problem is that Tim Ward refused to step in. He didn't do what he should have done, and it's not even that he just turned a blind eye. He allowed this to happen. And so people often ask me, well, why did that happen? And if you look at this, if you actually look at his financials, you'll find that Dr. Benzivi, through his company MedFlow, actually donated $21,000 to Tim Ward's campaign. And I'm convinced that that $21,000 ensured that the DA's office, under the leadership of Tim Ward, would not step in and do what was right. And now we have a public health crisis on our hands. The hospital is closed. Even right before it was closed, my wife and I had the opportunity to talk to a couple nurses who told us that they had to piece things together just to deliver a baby that day. Now, if you live in Tulare, and Tulare, mind you, has about 60,000 people that live there.
Right.
And you're talking even the surrounding countryside. These folks, if something happens to them, a city that large, where are they going to go? They have to drive to Cuya Delta and Visalia, or possibly even Sierra View and Porterville, or even maybe to Adventist and Hanford. That's a long drive, and lives are going to be put in danger.
I can understand. Well, Matt, you got a lot on your plate, son. I wish you the best.
Thank you.
Welcome back. As you go through the whole primary, are you primaried, or is this just going to be an election?
It's going to be election. It's a nonpartisan election, and it's going to be on June 5th.
On June 5th.
And we'll know that day.
All right. Well, I hope see you come back in District Attorney Matt, and we'll talk about it then.
I look forward to being back. Thank you so much.
Take care. All right, you got it straight from the horse's mouth. We'll see you when we come back.
Thank you. I got up already, sir.
Yeah.